I met those guys years ago, and then I was talking with a friend of mine one day who also raised hogs, and he was talking about some emmer screenings that he was using to feed. Do you know what a screening is?
Mm-hmm.
So when a farmer brings in the his load, basically it's a mix of, let's just say, of grain, let's say kamut basically. So when Bob Quinn, and he actually doesn't take his stuff anymore, he does it himself, but if Bob were to take it to somebody, he would bring it in and it would be kamut grains in there, there'd be broken kamut grains, there'd probably be some weed seeds in there, there'd be some rocks, there might be some lentils in there, and they screen all that basically. They kind of shake it through basically, so all they have left is the clean grain basically.
Right.
And that screening material then is kind of a waste product.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to call myself I'm a marginal farmer, and that's true in more ways than one. But but I studied economics. I'm a junior at the U of M. Go Grizz. I think my credits have probably expired at this point. But I studied economics. That was the thing I found most interesting at the university. And the thing in economics I found, there were a lot of things about economics I really appreciated, but the thing that really spoke to me is margins. And margins is basically that place where there's still value, but they're not quite sure what the value is. And so if you're a margin buyer, you come in, and if you can kind of help set the market. You're essentially a market maker, and you can kind of figure out. And then at that point, it depends on who else is at the table, basically, whether they can make a better offer than what you've made. So, but what I found in what I do is I found a lot of material that doesn't necessarily have value to the person in possession of it, but it has value to me. And so then it's a question of what can I provide back to them basically to make it worth it for me to take it off their hands and do something with it. And most of what that comes back into is labor, my labor, and then trade back, so meat or goat cheese or something like that, give them something back. And usually they're usually pretty happy because I'm doing kind of a service to them to help kind of get rid of it. So in this case, where my whole kind of feed operation has evolved to is, and the other thing I'll say is it's a lot of it's about relationships. Relationships are so important. So not only am I buying the grain, so I get my grain and legumes from basically two different places at this point: Timeless Seeds, and then from Bob Quinn. And I feed a mix of basically organic kamut, and like I've got a line on some kamut that he has right now, and it's got some Ethiopian hulless barley in it, and then some wild oats, which is considered a weed.
Is that like teff?
No, teff's something different.
Oh, okay.
It's a different grain.
That's like an amaranth or something, I think.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's different than the barley. This is just a hulless barley that was brought in, and that they grow. And then I've got I'll get at Timeless they have color sort rejects, which they go through and sort stuff by color a lot of times. And so those are sold at a discount. They have screenings, and so that's kind of the same thing. There's rocks and pieces of other stuff. They have a lot of broken lentils, and then they have something else they call lentil dust or lentil flour, and then there's the emmer flour, which is this it's kind of this old wheat varietal basically, so non-hybridized, and so a lot of people digest it better. And then occasionally they have garbanzo dust, and the dust is something I like because I don't have to grind it. It's already like pre-ground. And what that is when they're moving a lot of these grain and legumes around, this is kind of some of the seed coating that's coming off. So it's a lower protein than like your lentil or peas, but it still has good protein in it, and it has a lot of nutrients because that seed coat or that grain coat has a lot of nutrients there. So there's a lot of good nutrients in it. So I usually try to stock up in the fall, and I have a 40 foot, I have 24 foot of a 40-foot storage container that I store my grain in, because storage becomes an issue when I buy basically trailer loads at a time. So I'm usually hauling last time I came back last fall, I think I hauled about 14 tons of grain back basically. And So you got to worry about like moisture. You got to be able to keep things out of moisture, and then rodents are definitely an issue.
Keeping it in the connex wasn't a problem.
I had a little leak and it created a vein, but for the most part, no.
Oh, okay.
Most part, I do pretty good. And like I said, rodents. I had I guess like a ground squirrel or something came in, and
Through the doors.
I don't even know how he got in. But my God, it was a tarp in there, and he just shredded it, and it just wound up blowing out on the farm and made a huge, huge mess. Yeah, that's what we're raising American guinea hogs crossed with coonies.
Oh, perfect. Aren't Cootie Coonies kind of bigger?
No, they're smaller actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're bigger than American guinea hogs, but smaller than.
Smaller than American guinea hogs.
Really?
Yeah.
What was this cross American guinea hog with what?
Kuni. Kune. They're from New Zealand. They're kind of the Maori village pig.
Okay.
We got into minis. We raised our first hogs were like a Dora camp, which is pretty standard around here. They finish in 6 to 8 months, and then we were looking for something more different and heritage. And the rage was like large black hogs, which are this old breed, and bacon pig, and they're supposed to be good on pasture, and they don't root. There's no such thing as a non-rooting pig.
My chickens don't scratch either.
Yeah, right. They all root. It's just some root less than others.
And so the black heritage hogs are less rooting?
Yeah. It just depends on how much you move them and how much pasture you have. But if you leave a pig anywhere long enough, they will turn it into bare soil. All of them. So, and then we were looking at crossing some red wattle in there, and then we had some Berkshire, and around that time we just started to feel like the big hogs were just kind of killing us on the feed, and we just didn't feel like we could really make any money doing it. And so it's funny, Jill had told me, or someone had told me about mini hogs, and I was raising the big ones at the time. I kind of laughed, and I was kind of like, oh, mini hogs, that's kind of a joke. It's so silly.
Pygmy goats,
Yeah, right, whatever. And she was telling me, she said, someone's got an American guinea hog boar over in blah blah blah, and just on a whim, I just decided to do some research on it. And when I started doing research, I was like, it was kind of intriguing. And then I called this guy, I called these folks about this particular pig they had, and he was unique because the American guinea hog was reduced to about 300 animals basically from extinction, and they got basically, the breed got saved, and there were 2 main farms out in the West Coast that started breeding, and one in Washington, one in Oregon. And most of what you can find in the Western United States at this point is you can track their genealogy to those 2 points. And in fact, I will say almost anybody you can find is related to the boar I have. The difference with the boar I have, the thing that intrigued me, that got me kind of off the fence to actually decide to move on him, because he was actually going to get butchered, is they're originally from the southeast United States, and he's the only. So since then, once I got him, I started looking for females to breed him with, and I know this because I must have called like 20 different people. And an interesting thing, everybody had genetics. Everybody knew what the genetics were. So I was able to get records and look and see who he was related to. He was the only one I found that had Southeast genetics crossed with the West Coast genetics. So he's rare in that. And so I decided to kind of take the plunge, but I couldn't find anybody that was enough of a distant relative of his, that I just decided to not do pure American guinea hog, and I found these coonies, and coonies are kind of hard to find. A lot of people raise them for pets, and so they charge pet price tags for them. I mean, the price tags were anywhere from $500 or $600 up to $1,500 for an animal. It was kind of crazy. So, but I found this guy that had 4 of them. He was selling for $600 in north of Portland, basically. So I had to. I went to see my grandmother, who was actually just back east, and took my son. We went out to Seattle, flew out to see her, flew back, drove down to Portland, loaded these 4 pigs in the back of my station wagon, and then drove back to Montana, hoping I was going to get pulled over, because I was pretty sure I was breaking some laws, basically transporting them across the state. we'd stop at rest stops and just people would be like looking and stuff. I'd be like, all right, bud, let's go. Come on. I need to get out
Hurry
of
up,
here.
load up.
But oh man, I will never do that again. Do not load pigs in the back of your station wagon and drive 10 hours. You will regret it. It's not fun. They stink. They don't like it. They were small. I mean, they were pretty young at the time. So anyway, it was 2 sows and then two babies basically is what we got. And the one sow, she was pretty much ready to go, so we were able to try to breed pretty soon. And then the other sow, we tried breeding her. Had a litter, first litter, couldn't. The other sow didn't take. Put her together again. I guess it was like the second litter or something like that. And then I think babies might have gotten big enough; they were ready to go. And so we were kind of like at the point where we're like, that second sow is just not working out. She must be barren or something, and probably try one more time, and then she's got to go to the butcher. And then we were out there one day, and Jill, my wife, was like looking at him, and she says, that sow's peeing kind of funny. It's kind of peeing.
Oops.
Anyway, he was really tasty. It was our first experience with mini pigs. So that's only the one time we've had. No, it's not the one time. We've had it since then. So anyway, what we figured out was we got 4 of them. 2 of them were brother and sister, and the babies that we had were line bred to the mom, basically from the original dad. So actually we culled the other 2 because we were getting really, really low weights, basically finish weights on them. And I mean, to some degree with the minis, the advantage of the minis is they're more docile. They're very adaptable. They'll do well on a lot of different feeds, including pasture and weeds and stuff, if that's what you have. And but at the same time, you want to make it, especially if you're doing like I could sell you a hog, and you could come to the farm and butcher it, and that would be completely legal. I could even help you do it, as long as you take possession of everything and leave. But if I want to sell it to the bakery, or if I want to go to farmer's market or something and sell it retail, it has to be processed at a
FDA
state
slaughter.
Not that it has to be state inspected. In Montana, it's just state. If you want to sell outside of the state, it has to be I think USDA inspected.
In Washington, it's USDA inspection.
Yeah. And so any butcher shop, if that's the case, should have that. Although
USDA
there are
certification.
there are exceptions. Like there's butcher shops in Montana that I could take an animal in and they could sell it back to me, but they still couldn't do retail because they're not state inspected. So it's actually, my understanding, it's not that hard to actually set up a butcher shop as long as what you're doing is private sale. But the moment that you get into retail, it's a whole nother level.
That's in Montana, right?
That's in Montana, yes. State to states can be different.
Yeah.
But
And you can, I think in Washington, you can sell half an animal. But you can't break it down.
Right.
Once you start to break it down past half, then it's considered. Then you have to have a certified butcher involved with USDA. But what we did in Northeast Washington on the board of the council for the County Ag Development Council, and what we did was get a grant, purchase a mobile processor, and then help the guy get USDA certified. He was working on it. He worked it a few years, and then he had first right of refusal on purchasing the unit, so then he purchased the unit. So that mobile unit concept is really helpful for the small farmers because he can move it around. If they've got a lot to butcher, they can bring their animals to him, and he can do everything from the kill to the final wrap.
And these mobile units can be used for all different kinds of animals?
Yeah, but we have a different chicken processing, poultry processing unit, but yeah, the mobile slaughter unit can be used for any of the ungulates.
Who makes those?
I don't know. I would have to connect you with some of our CADC folk who what we actually bought. Actually, we're considering getting another one now because we sold that one to that guy,
And ultimately, with a piece of equipment like that, I think in order to make it viable, you have to actually have it at pretty close to full-time use.
Yeah.
Like it becomes a business in its own.
But it could be like a cooperative sort of like
Sure.
shared
Yeah, I'm interested in
thing or
doing a
something like
grange
that.
and having those kinds of things be,
Yeah.
pieced out to different folks. So
Yeah.
The mobile chicken unit works well for that. The poultry unit, because you can disassemble and kind of get it all in a van if you need to.
There's one of those down in the Bitterroot, and I believe there's somebody that's state inspected that actually can do on-field slaughters. And the only person I know up here that does on-farm slaughters is just private sale, so I can't do any retail with them. And that's the ideal, is to do a farm slaughter.
Do you really need to do
Let's-
to do public sale or retail? Because you can do so much by word of mouth, right?
Not well.
Maybe it depends on where you
how
are.
do you start that word of mouth? I mean, if you start from nothing,
You have to.
you got to start somewhere.
You give away samples.
I mean,
to
I've been
friends.
doing.
Because we live in such a small town, and I moved there not even a year ago. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody. Now I've got more work than I know what to do with, and it's all like word of mouth. And everybody knows what we're doing, and I feel like if I put out there, "Hey, I'm raising this thing. Do you want some of that?"
Well, one thing is, it's interesting. When we moved up here, and people in town, small town and stuff, so people hear, you're moving in, and what are you doing, and that sort of thing. We told people about, we were raising pigs and goats and stuff like that. So we do goat dairy, little goat dairy, cow dairy, and then the pigs, and then we just got into yaks too. So, but people were really interested in buying what we had until they found out what the price was. And the problem is that when you're doing organic, I can't do organic feed and then not have the price reflect the cost of raising the animal. And that's one of the difficult things living in there's a lot of poverty here if you haven't been able to tell.
Oh, we're in the poorest county in Washington.
Yeah.
Mason County just had to lay off a bunch of sheriffs. They can't even pay for sheriffs.
So you'd have to get real creative.
Probably poorer here. You're right.
You have to get real creative, and I have gotten really creative. But even still, what I've been doing is selling frozen cuts, and even that is, I'm barely making it doing that. I know I'm covering my costs. I know I'm in the black basically, but at one point I was kind of half joking around and half serious, trying to figure out how much I was making an hour, and I think I came up with 20 cents an hour or something like that. So
Well, it's not losing 20 cents an hour.
Right.
So-
right.
It's that prison labor wages.
I'm not getting any younger though, so I probably just need to start thinking about retirement. But anyway, just to finish up on the whole feed thing. Where I'm at now is I've got relationships with with the largest organic farmer in the state who grows the kamut, and he does all his own processing, or most of the time he does. And then with Timeless Seeds, it's a processor basically for screening, so something that's not human consumption but is great for animals. And then a few years ago, I used to be in the biofuel business, and so I think in terms of like waste into energy basically a lot of times. And so I used to collect vegetable oil and make biodiesel, and I was actually involved with a oilseed crush facility in eastern Montana, and the company got as big, it was like we sold it for $12 million to a hedge fund in New York that gave us $100,000 at closing and then basically stole the company. So it was after that I got out of big business and decided to be kind of handshake guy. But anyway, I always think about in terms of waste streams into energy, and I like beer, and I noticed when they filled growlers up. I mean, who's seen a growler get filled up before? Have you ever known so much beer they waste?
Slop, slop, slop. Yeah, they try to get the foam out.
Yeah, so I started with Big Sky Brewery, which is Missoula's biggest microbrewery. Really great guys, really good into the community. And I just said, hey, and originally I was thinking about making ethanol. I was like, if I could get some of the beer, I could distill that alcohol out and then make ethanol for fuel. Well, so I asked them, and they said, no, it just goes down the sewer. And they're busy. They didn't really want to talk to me very much. So that kind of ends the conversation. The next place I tried was the Kettle House, because that was my next favorite brewery. And they were like, it goes in the buckets, and then we dump it. And I said, well, could I have it? And I thought about it for a minute. I'm like, I guess. And so they started giving it to me. So I'd start getting a 5-gallon bucket here and there. and I did some distilling. I realized it was way too good to make into fuel for your car.
Yes.
And the
hello.
waste product from distilling it is actually is really great for the pigs because it still has a lot of nutrition in it, has a lot of flavonoids and vitamins and minerals, and essentially what you're taking out of it with the alcohol is the energy, and some of the flavonoids. But and then one day I went in and they said, we can't do this anymore.
Oh.
And I said, well, why not? What happened? And they said, well, we use cleaning agents sometimes and down the lines, and we don't want to make you or anybody else sick or your pig sick. I was like, okay, I get that, I understand. And then, I don't know, a year went by, and then I went in one day, and one of my favorite, the guy that originally had got me going on at the barista, he was like, hey, there's new management in place here, and they might be into this whole thing that we were doing, but you should ask them. So I think I was still coming off of feeling so depressed that I had lost that resource, because I had made I'd made whiskey, I made an IPA whiskey, not an IPA whiskey, it was an IPA shine, I called it, but I actually made a whiskey that I aged in a oak mead barrel for over a year. That was just, I've had a lot of people try it. I knew the guy at one point that Smuggler's Brews. Prove it. Okay. Well, we're doing a farm tour later, and it won't be the end of the whole session. So maybe if you come to the farm tour. I knew the guy that Glenn Fry wrote Smuggler's Blues about. Okay, he was a world-class smuggler, had moonshine around the world, and he said mine was some of the best moonshine ever had. Yeah.
Whoa.
There you go.
Oh,
little
that's
factoid
impressive.
there. Yeah.
I still think he has the proof.
I am skeptical. It's one
Yeah.
thing to claim. But
I also the other thing, I was also getting some skunk wine from an organic winery in Missoula, and I was making brandy out of that, and then feeding the rest of the pigs from that. But yeah. So anyway, so it took me like a couple months before I actually remembered to go talk to management, and I went in, and they were like, so you guys have heard of Sierra Nevada?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They're incredible, and I don't know if you ever have a chance to look into the story of what they're doing as far as energy capture and just closed loop systems. They're just they look everywhere of how to close the loop, and just are an amazing company. If every corporation was like them, we'd live in utopia, basically. They do such a good job. Anyway, so they're kind of the gold standard, and they were kind of, they looked to them, and they wanted to be more like what they were doing. So I kind of told them, I didn't want to tell them much about what we had done before, because I didn't want to get anybody in trouble, because it was kind of, on the down low. But it was really an easy conversation, and they basically said, yeah, this sounds great to us. We'd love to give you our waste beer. We actually have 2 kegs of an IPA downstairs right now. We've rehopped it and rehopped it. It's just not coming out right. Would you take it? And they're like, and I was like, yeah, 2 kegs sounds great. I could probably do something with that. And I said, but I don't have a tap. And they're like, well, we'll grab you a tap. Let's get you a tap too. So I left that day with 2 kegs. And I don't know how much of that got fed to the pigs, but Hot Strings had a lot. I had a fair amount. There was IPA shine that came out of it. It was pretty good. Are we recording this?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Say that. Anyway,
I have a cool story to share about pigs. I used to have a herd of 60.
Okay.
And just down the road from me was a Kraft's cheese factory. And they didn't do anything with the whey, so I'd go get the whey. And across the street from me was a potato factory that made the potatoes for Pringles. So they collected all that dust. So I'd feed my pigs whey, hot whey, and dust every day. Talk about weight gain and sweet to eat.
Hot whey and dust. Huh?
Oh, it was so good for them. They go crazy even smelling.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, but what an ideal location to raise pigs.
So those kind of things are around us everywhere if you have your eyes open.
Yeah. So that relationship for me has extended to. It used to be I got 20 to 30 gallons a week, maybe, and now they just expanded. They opened a whole new production facility, so now I'm getting about 300 gallons a month, and it's almost more than I can handle. I'm starting to use some of it. I finished a cow on lentil, dust, and beer a couple years ago at Jersey, and he was on his mom for a long time too, so he got a lot of milk. but it was unreal beef. I mean, it was like corn-fed beef essentially. It was yellow fat. It just was, the fat was like intoxicating. It smelled and tasted so good. So
Prove it.
he's gone. I couldn't
Need to do
prove
a show
that.
and tell.
We'd have to take my word for it. But you know what? So on a small farm setting, what I feel like I've gotten tasked with, because I don't have volume to make up sales, is trying to do as high quality and sell into the highest ranging market. I mean, one of the hard things about being in this area is I know I've been to a lot of farmers markets. I've been to Portland. I've been to Seattle. Lots of farmers markets in Seattle. And the reality is, what I'm selling here, I could sell for double over there.
Oh, sure.
You know, and I'd love to do that. That'd be great, but I can't. So I'm here at this market, but I have to get as much out of them as I can. So if I only have a certain amount of animals, that's why we got into yaks, because we have a small farm, and I feel like no matter how well I do a cow, I just wasn't really convinced that I could really sell high value, basically, without being different. And so the yak is as much of a gimmick for us as anything. It gives us something different. When people come up to the stand, you know, I don't just say, hey, I got pork. I say, I got yak and pork. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, yak, what's, you know, and then they buy pork from me. But you know, but some of them buy the yak too. But it's something, it's like a story, and that's the other part of it. So the other thing is, where I'm at now is I've got the beer. I soak my lentils or grain in the beer, basically. I have milk from my cow that I culture, turn into yogurt. I add that to the mix, and then I've got goat whey for making goat chev, basically. I mix that in and culture the whole thing. And then I'm getting seasonal cull vegetables and fruit. So usually it starts off with like apricots and cherries, basically from an orchard in Paradise. And then they have peaches. Last year, I fed about 2 tons of peaches to my pigs, about 1,000 pounds of cherries. And then there's a organic, Paradise Gardens is right next door. They're a certified organic vegetable farm. I probably picked, and this is bad for them because they had a large buyer back out on them. And so I probably harvested close to 5 tons of squash. Now this is like essentially driving through the farm pass and then walking out into the field and loading this all out by hand. It's not.
My God.
It's not easy, but
No,
but
it's my. I don't need a gym membership because it's crazy. I mean, it feels good, but it's just like right now I'm in the midst. They just offered a new thing to me, which was they had been having someone else harvesting the corn stalks. And so that's something new where essentially they go through and harvest corn. Now I'm going through afterwards. I'm harvesting the stalks. The stalks are good for the ruminants, the cows and goats. And then there's still a lot of corn left on those stalks that is just cull corn, basically. It's too damaged for them to sell. I pick all that off, or as much as I can, and feed that to the pigs. So, and then with the orchard, cherries are too small. It's not really worth going through and picking up cull cherries. But there's always, so they had a real bad cold snap. So it's seasonal. So, and yearly, more than seasonal. It's like yearly, and they did not have nearly the cherry and peach production. So last year they literally